Today, we're joined by someone who truly embodies leadership and excellence. Jeremy Silvas, Managing Director and Complex Manager for Raymond James North Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma Complex, which includes our Fort Worth office here as well. Jeremy's story is all about excellence. From serving in the Navy to building a successful career in financial services, he's led with discipline, purpose, and a commitment to helping others succeed. Qualities that earned him Raymond James Manager of the Year recognition. In our conversation, we talk about his journey, the decisions that shaped his career, what drives him as a leader, and how the pursuit of excellence continues to define everything he does. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. Jeremy,
hey,
welcome to Between the Bears and the Bulls.
Thanks for having me.
Dude,
I'm excited.
This is going to be so much fun. You know, I think this is the first time that I have a fellow Corpus Christian sitting right there.
Corpus Christian.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever been referred to as that, but that's great. Yes,
native from Corpus Christi.
I'm excited.
I actually want to start there too. So, obviously, from Corpus Christi, like myself, and and then went to the military. So, tell me a little bit about like life for you starting off in Corpus Christi and then going into the military and the Navy.
Great question. So, obviously we're a little different generations. So I'm a little bit older than you. But, born and raised in Corpus Christi, went to high school there, Moody High School.
Okay.
And I was in ROTC. So I played sports. I played a little bit of football. But, when you get to high school, you realize these guys are just too big and too fast for me. So, I had to find a different way. My dad was in the military. He was in the Navy. So I got into ROTC, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the leadership aspect, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But I was in ROTC for 4 years, did a lot of competitions, drill competitions, things like that. When I graduated, nobody in my family had ever gone to college. And you being from Corpus Christi, Corpus can be a trap. You can get stuck there and, you can go certain paths. I had a buddy of mine that was going to college. He was going to Stephen F. Austin because his brother played baseball there. And I didn't know a lot about college or anything like that. And I said, hey, what the heck, I'll apply. And I applied and I got in. So I went, and there was 3 of us that went together to Stephen F. Austin, and I was a fish out of water. I mean, it was just too much fun for me, you know. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but I made a 0.6 GPA. One of those D's was in tennis. I don't know how you do that, but basically I was just having a lot of fun. Yeah. So I moved back home after that first semester and said I just need to reset. I had worked at HEB all through high school, got my job back as an assistant manager at HEB, and I said, I'm just going to reset and take some college classes here in Corpus and just see what happens. I just need to settle down.
Were you Del Mar in Corpus?
I went to Del Mar.
Yep, exactly.
Enrolled in classes at Del Mar. So that was, December or January after my first semester. And a buddy of mine was joining the Navy. And he said, hey, can you give me a ride to the recruiter's office? And so I gave him a ride to the recruiter's office. And I walked in, and I got to tell you, those guys are good. They are really, really good. We should hire them in this business here because they're really good. I went in to watch my buddy sign his paperwork. I walked out thinking, I'm going to be a freaking Navy SEAL. This is what I want to do. Like, this guy had me so jacked up. I'm going to be a SEAL. And I went home and told my mom that I was going to join the Navy. And, we had a little discussion about it. And I went back. A couple days later, signed up, and that March, I was on a bus to San Antonio, a big chartered bus that they bring in. They put you all on a bus. You go to San Antonio, they process you, and they put you on a plane. And I was in San Diego a couple days later, literally all within a 3-month span of leaving Stephen F. Austin.
Oh my God, man!
So now I'm in boot camp in San Diego in March.
Okay, so how is boot camp is intense as everything that you hear about, right? Because you just said that you wanted to do. You were going to be a Navy SEAL, right? And so then how does boot camp, how is that to the normal person, right?
To the normal person, it can be intense.
Yeah.
To the rest of the military, the Navy probably has the lighter boot camp.
Okay, gotcha.
That being said, look, it was intense. I think for me, the best thing is just the structure.
Yeah.
The first thing you do, and I wore glasses or contacts back then. The first thing they do is they take your glasses and they give everybody the same pair of brown square glasses, so that everybody looks uniform. They shave your head.
Yeah.
They give you the glasses. Everybody has the same pair of glasses.
Yeah.
It's just the structure. So, the intensity probably comes from them yelling at you or barking orders or the physical fitness part of it. That's where a lot of the intensity comes from. I think there are other branches of the military, like the Marines, that could be a lot more intense with that, but it's still intense. To the normal person, it's still intense.
So you're going through that. Is there ever, in that moment, are you thinking to yourself, what the hell did I just do? Or did that ever come to mind as you're going through this boot camp?
100%.
Okay,
Yes.
or all right, so you didn't know.
100%. You sit there and you're like, man, this was a great idea at first. And it's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Right? And there's no way out. Once you're there, you're there. It's not, I know there's things once you do go to like a SEALs boot camp or something, there's a bell you can ring and say, okay, I've had enough, I'm out.
Right.
In just your Navy boot camp, you don't really do that. There's no bell that you can ring that says, hey, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
So no, you're there, and there are times that you sit here and go, what in the world am I doing? The good news on that is you have 80 other guys in that company going through the same thing. Yeah. And what's really cool that I remember guys being from the backwoods of XYZ state, country guys that had never even really been to big schools or, big cities. And all of a sudden they're thrown in this. So you meet a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, and you're all going through the same stuff. And I think in a weird way, you sort of all help yourself pull through that.
Talk about the experiences that you had, because obviously it had a significant impact on your leadership, right, and leadership style. And we'll talk a little bit about this as we continue. But that had to play a significant part in who you are today. So what are some of the things that you took away from, whether it was boot camp, post-boot camp, that developed that leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in boot camp, and I'm going to back up here in a second, but I'll tell you in boot camp, I ended up, after a couple of days of boot camp, you have 80 guys in your company, and there's several different companies all going through the same boot camp at the same time, and you're competing against these other companies and a lot of the things that you do throughout those 9 weeks of boot camp. But when you first get there, the drill instructors are marching the company around, and they're picking different people. They know your background. They've already read your file, and they're picking a couple of different people and said, hey, you get up here, and they call them the RCPO. That's the Recruit Chief Petty Officer. Okay. And they want you to march the people around. And the people that were doing it, they were floundering. They didn't know what they were doing. I had been in ROTC for 4 years. That was easy to me.
Okay.
I already knew how to do that. So when they gave me my shot, it just came natural. I became the RCPO for the whole 9 weeks of boot camp.
Okay.
I've always just gravitated towards a leadership position. I just enjoy it. And it's not a power trip. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy being in the front. I don't mind the pressure of it. And I've thought about this a lot. It goes all the way back to safety patrol in elementary.
Oh yeah,
when I was in elementary, and
I
had the orange belt and I had the badge and I was holding the sign.
Yep, exactly.
That said, stop. The lieutenant had the red badge, and he was the guy that was making sure people were where they were supposed to be and making sure that if they had a question or helping the new guys. And I wanted to be the lieutenant for as long as I can remember. I was 6 or 7 years old. I just enjoy the leadership aspect of it. From that standpoint, I just enjoy helping people.
Yeah.
So
you go through boot camp 9 weeks. Then what does life look like in the Navy? So then you did it for how long? I mean,
when I went in undesignated, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I just, in my mind, I wanted to be a SEAL. I wanted to try out to be a SEAL. As luck would have it or destiny would have it, I had injured my shoulder somewhere along the way. I don't know if it was when I was in college or high school, but my shoulder was messed up. So I wasn't ever able to try out because I had to go figure out what was wrong with my shoulder. So I went to the doctor, and they wanted to give me light duty and therapy. It eventually needed surgery on that shoulder, which I got.
Gotcha.
So I was never able to try that. But when I became the Recruit Chief Petty Officer for the Navy, or for boot camp, I also won the Outstanding Recruit Award for boot camp, which is a really big honor. And as part of that honor, they say now you can pick any designation you want to. The first thing I signed up for was corpsman because I was like, I want to be a corpsman. That sounds pretty cool, and maybe I can figure out a medical path somewhere along my life at that point. Well, corpsman was full, and I went down the list of, what can you be that would allow you to try out for the SEALs? Because only certain designations would qualify you to try out. And so I picked gunner's mate, and the gunner's mate, they said, hey, that one's open. The A school for that, the training, is in Great Lakes, Illinois, so up by Chicago. Okay. And so that was it. That was my next stop. Is right after San Diego. You fly home for a couple of days, and then you're off at Chicago or Waukegan, Illinois at that point.
And so, what does that look like? What is that position? Because I don't know, and this is what's interesting. What did you do in that position in the Navy?
So in non-wartime, you're basically running armories. You know,
Okay,
you're manning the armory on the ship. In wartime, you're the guy that's pulling the trigger
Right, okay,
when the commander or whoever says fire.
Right,
you know,
I see.
You're manning the guns. You're the gunner's mate.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I never got to that point. To answer your question, I was in for about 2 years.
Okay.
So when I figured out my shoulder was messed up and I'm up in Great Lakes, Illinois, they gave me a couple of options and said you can have surgery, we can repair it, you can be on light duty, you can be what they call a yeoman, which is a secretary job. At that point, I didn't want to be in the Navy to be a secretary.
Yeah.
I needed the Navy for exactly what it did for me. I just needed to grow up. Yeah. I needed to get my life in order. I needed a little bit of structure, and at that point, I felt like I had it. Clinton was downsizing the military back in those days, and they said, we can give you a medical discharge. It's going to take about 12 weeks to review, but if you can get this medical discharge, it's honorable. You can get out, you can go back to school. The only caveat is you don't get any GI Bill. That's the trade-off. We're downsizing the military. We'll let you out, but you can't get the GI Bill. So I was in there for about 2 years. I was up in Great Lakes for most of that time. It took a long time to do the medical review.
Yeah.
So I was on a 3-day rotation where one day was a free day after PT. One day I was buffing floors, in the barracks, and I can buff a floor. And then one day I was working in the cafeteria, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So
any instance throughout that entire time that sticks in your mind where you're like, that was a pivotal moment for me as a person, or even just something that you always go back to, and you're like, that was something that I'll remember from my 2 years there.
Well, yeah, and it's as silly as it's going to sound.
Yeah.
I told you I felt like I grew up.
Yeah.
There's a time where you just don't know anybody. You're there, and all of a sudden you get 2 or 3 new bunk mates that are in your room in the barracks, and I think one point I got sick. I don't know if I had the flu or something like that, but you don't have mom. You can't,
Right.
We didn't have cell phones back then. I couldn't call her.
Yeah.
I couldn't text her, and you have to figure it out.
Right.
All of a sudden it's like, man, I got to figure out, do I go to the doctor or do I just go get some meds real quick, or you got to show up at work the next day, and at 19 years old, that makes you grow up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I do remember that aspect of it.
Well, so there's a transition here, though, right? Because you do that, and then you get into financial services. How in the world does that translate, right? And I will say this: I actually do think that there are a lot of similarities, and you'll probably talk a little bit about that. But between some of the leadership and some of the discipline that it took in the military, obviously, and the financial services, and obviously, thank you for your service to our country. It's something that I never had that opportunity to do it, but have a family that have done that, and so just want you to know how much we appreciate it. But talk a little bit about that transition from what you did after and how in the world you gotten into this side of the business, right?
Well, first I'll tell you, I appreciate the thank you. There's a lot of times I look back and say, man, what if I would have stayed there? What if I'd have stayed there and taken the secretary role and fixed my shoulder in the Navy? And, I would have been, 25, 30 years. That was 30 years ago, you know. And I sit there and think about that. What would that have been? But I don't regret it. I said the Navy did exactly what I needed it to do, was just to grow me up. And I met a lot of really cool people at the time, and that was fun. So what happened with me specifically is right after I got that medical discharge, my buddies were still at Stephen F. Austin, and so I went back to school.
Okay.
And I felt like I was ready at this point. I had grown up a little bit. And I wanted to major in economics or finance. I actually chose economics because I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the theory part of it. I'm good with math, but it wasn't so much number crunching. It was talking about more about the money supply and, how things work, and little things like why do cities like, Dallas build a tollway? What's the tollway? Taking urban economics and things like that was just interesting to me. When I was in high school, my economics teacher played the stock market game with me. Or with us, with the class. And you get, so many dollars and you pick a couple of stocks, and that was just fun. I don't even remember what stocks I picked or how I did. I just knew it was fun. And I thought, man, this is a pretty cool. And the movie Wall Street had come out. I mean, you can see all the TV shows. And I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but we didn't have computers when I was in high school. But in the counselor's office, they had a book. It was the Job Occupational Outlook Handbook. And you can flip through there and see how much a teacher makes or how much a pilot makes. And stockbroker made the most money. And to me, I looked at it, and I didn't grow up with a lot of money in Corpus Christi. And I thought, man, they make a lot of money. It seems like a really cool job. It was fun playing the stock market game. Yeah. I'm going to try that path. And So when I went back to Stephen F., that's the path I wanted to do, and I interviewed with people that would come on campus, like oldie discount stockbrokers, and names that aren't even around anymore. But I pretty much knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I finished the whole 4 years in 3 years. At that point, I was on a mission, but I felt like I had grown up. I was ready for it at that point.
Did anything specific that you can point to on the military side where you said, okay, this is a habit or something that I learned in the military side that got me prepared for the financial services side?
I think structure.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing is, being able to wake up and get to class on time and stick to a structure or have a study schedule. I also worked in college. I was a waiter and a bartender. And so, being able to work all night and then go home and study for 3 hours, but still wake up at 7 and make it to class at 8 and be prepared for that test. And I think just, the Navy and the military in general talk a lot about attention to detail, but it's really a lot of structure too. It's the structure part of your life that I think is super helpful in any job.
Right, yeah. And I'm sure working with people too, obviously. I mean, you're around all of those, as a leader within the military, you obviously have to connect with a lot of people, right? And so there's got to be some of that, obviously, spillover into this. And so what I think is so interesting, and I obviously know a little bit more about the direction that you went with financial services, but you kind of had a niche when you started in the financial services side. What was that niche that you that you went after, or what the type of people you went after?
It's a good question. So when I started, let me back up for a second and tell you. When I started, I got hired by Fidelity Investments, and I thought, man, I'm going to be a stockbroker. I got hired by an investment firm. And I didn't realize I was on the other end of the 800 number. So you see the commercials, it says, call 1-800-FIDELITY. That was me. I was answering phones. I was changing addresses or sending a prospectus out. And it was great. I learned how to talk to people on the phone, clients. I got licensed, so I did all of that stuff that helped shape my career. But after about 18 months, I was sitting down with my manager doing a review, and I said, hey, this has been great. I love this experience. I'm licensed, but I want to work in a branch office. I want to be a stockbroker. How do I get to be one of those guys in the office? And you would have thought I was, in the mailroom or something, because he said, no, they don't hire people from the phone site. And part of who I am is I just don't like to be told no. If you tell me I can't do it, then it's now
I didn't know that about you, man. That's surprising.
Now it's a challenge. Now you're challenging me. So I called one of the local branch offices in Las Colinas here in DFW, and I got the manager on the phone, and I said, I introduced him. I said, I work for the same company. I'm at the phone site. I would love to just come down there and meet with you. Really, I just want to know what you guys do. I'm trying to figure out my career. Somehow or another, I kept him on the phone, and we kept talking. He said, man, it's going to be IRA season next week. I'm going to be really busy, but you can come down. I'll have you work the front counter. And I thought, this is great. So I went down there, and I worked that whole week with him and just really got an internship into the branch. And I did that for about 6 months. He started calling the phone site and saying, we're going to be busy. Can you send Jeremy down here? And after about 6 months, he offered me a job as a financial advisor in the branch office. So that's how I got my start. And I'm losing track. What was your question on that?
The type of people that you wanted to help.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with those
That's
individuals?
a great question. Okay. So I become a financial advisor, and I wanted to own my own business, which is what led me, and I think Fidelity is a phenomenal company, but I wanted to own my own business. So I left and went into the full service world, and I met a buddy of mine who happened to end up being my partner at the time. My old partner, David, he played football at Memphis. Okay. He had he wanted to be an agent one day when he got out of college. It didn't work out, so he had a couple of clients that he knew that were in the NFL. So every time I'd go into his office, he had some jerseys on the wall, and I was intrigued. I was like, this is really cool. How did you get to work with these athletes? And he said, you don't want to do this. You don't want to work with professional athletes because, it's a tough business. The money comes in, but it goes out really quickly. It's high maintenance, and you just, you don't want to do this. And I said, no, I was young. I wasn't even 30 yet, and I'm trying to energize my career. I had a good little base of business, but I wanted to really propel to the next level. He goes, all right, I'll show you everything you want to know, but you're going to do all the work. And Dave and I are about 10 years apart in age. And he did. We started working on athletes, and what you find in DFW, we have such a pool of talent that goes across the country to all these different universities, but they're from right here in our backyard or somewhere around Texas. And we started just trying to talk to athletes and their families while they were juniors and seniors at college right before they went to the NFL. And you get one, and one led to another, and we ended up with 43 NFL clients and had an NFL business that was booming. So
So I got to ask you specifically, and you know what I'm probably going to ask, because I think the story that you worked with Adrian Peterson,
Yes.
right? And so I want to know, how in the world did you get Adrian Peterson as a client? What's the story?
So I used to do a lot of reading.
Okay.
And I still do. I try to educate yourself and try to figure out, it's always a competition or a game. You're trying to figure out how to get that edge. And I read a story that I thought was awesome. And Adrian's from Palestine, Texas, so right here in East Texas, right in our backyard. But I read a story. When he was coming out of high school, he was the number one recruit in America. Everybody wanted him, from Lou Holtz to Pete Carroll. I mean, everybody was recruiting him. And the guy that got him, according to this story, was Bob Stoops. And one of the big reasons that he got him was he made a personal visit to the prison to visit with Adrian's dad. And people didn't realize that Adrian and his dad were very close. They spoke on the phone once a week. And Nelson is a sharp dude. When I got to meet Nelson Peterson, he was a really sharp dude. And so in my mind, I thought, that's the key. I got to figure out how to get to Nelson Peterson so that I can introduce myself. And I wrote a letter. I wrote a handwritten letter that I called the prison. I figured out, how do I mail this thing? They give me the exact mailing address and how to address it and the inmate number and everything. And I just wrote a letter and sent it and thought, you do things like that and you think, this is a shot in the dark. You're probably never going to hear anything. A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from one of his contacts that it was down in Austin, Texas. And she said, hey, Nelson got your letter. I just wanted to talk to you about it. And she and I stayed on the phone for about 2 hours. She said, not a lot of people realize this, but he's getting out a year early. He's going to see Adrian's junior year. I'm going to have him call you. You're like, wow. So you hang up the phone. You're like, he's going to call me. And then you think, he's never going to call me.
Right, exactly.
That's not going to happen. And sure enough, a month later, I get a phone call from him. And that just started this cycle. And it was a cycle that I thought was never going to end. It was a long sales cycle. And it can be frustrating at times because just like Adrian being recruited out of high school, every coach in America, every financial advisor in America was trying to get to him too. And so it's me versus 200 other people. But I just have this certain thing, like I was telling you earlier, I don't like to be told no. And my old partner, Dave, kept saying, it's never going to happen, And I used to say, he's got to hire somebody, right? He's going to hire somebody. Might as well be us.
Right.
And we stayed in front of it. And sure enough, we got to the point where he declares he's going to the NFL. He was in Arizona. I'm meeting with his dad one time. And his dad said, we've narrowed this list down. We're going to send a couple, this list of 4 or 5 financial advisors to Arizona to go meet with Adrian and his brother. And we flew up to Arizona, and we just had a great 3-hour lunch. And after that was over, I was talking to his dad. His dad said, hey, Adrian's tired of this process, and you got the job. And you're almost on the other line saying, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Is this real? Is this real life?
Yeah.
So are you telling me that I need to start writing letters to prisins? Is that what I need to do to continue to grow my business?
What I'm telling you is I think the power of a handwritten note is still powerful.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
This day and age of social media and texting and I've got a son in college, and I try to help him understand. I mean, the human element of interactions is still powerful.
Oh, no doubt.
And it's I don't think it has to die with phones and texting and everything else.
Yeah,
so.
The thing I take away from that story is just this kind of determination that you had in everything that you do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because to your point, how many people nowadays would try to figure something like that out and say, oh, I'm going to write a letter to a prison to essentially try to connect with his dad, right? Most people would say it'd never work, and it probably wouldn't on most situations. But it's once again, it's one of those, that kind of mindset where you'll try anything and everything. And, sometimes, what is it? You get lucky, and people probably had told you that. You got so lucky, and I've heard that too in certain situations. And then you start realizing it's like, okay, well, it's because you put yourself in lucky situations, right? And so if you don't take advantage of those opportunities or put yourself out there, then you're never going to get lucky.
A wise man once said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
There we go. That's exactly
who said that?
No, who said that?
That's Pitbull.
Was it really?
Yes.
I love that.
Pitbull was in an interview, and he said that his family always comes up to him and says, man, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. Because, it's funny. The harder I work, the luckier I get.
That's great.
And I think it's great. It's the truth.
Yeah.
You just said it.
Yeah,
you got to put forth the effort.
You said something a couple times too, so I love that. It's the mindset, it's that determination, it's that willingness to put yourself out there. But you said you don't like being told no, right? Where did that start? Why is it that you are that way? Is it something early in your childhood that kind of puts your mindset to saying, no, I'm going to always show people that I can do anything, right?
That's a really good question. I've never really thought about that part in terms of where that comes from. You know, I like I said before, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I didn't grow up with, you know, my dad died when I was 8 years old. You know, I was living with my mom, single mom, but I had my grandparents. So my paternal grandfather was like my father for so long, and he was a butcher. He was just a butcher and worked hard every day. He woke up early, went and, you know, did his deal. Yeah. He used to always tell me, though, and I'll never forget this part. He always used to tell me, I don't want you to do what I do. I don't want you to work with your hands. I want you to work with a pencil, you know, calculator and a pencil. And there was a lot of other things that he would teach me. I mean, if I stayed with them for the weekend and I went out with my buddies, I mean, he would wake me up at 7 a.m. to clean the car from going to the beach the night before, you know, things like that. So a lot of those things similar to the Navy, just structure, just learning to respect the things that you have, learning to work hard. And I don't know if that comes from, or if that helps with, you know, me saying I don't like to be told no. I kind of, to me, it's almost a game too. I enjoy proving people wrong.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So it's really funny because a lot of what you just said, I feel the same way in everything that I do. Right, I'm more motivated when somebody tells me that I'm not going to be able to do something. That's the greatest motivation for me. You know.
Yeah, I know
and
that.
So
about
it's like
you.
right. And so tell me I can't do it, and
Right.
I can look forward to proving you wrong. And that's just been my mindset as well. So I see
well,
a lot
and I think one of the things, you know, that I was just thinking about, you and I also resonate with that because we're competitive in that nature. We don't like, you know, we don't like to be told no, but we also respect a lot of the things that we have accomplished and what we've done. And you know, I was just thinking about, you know, things that my grandfather used to teach me, and, you know, cutting grass, for example. I'm one of the only guys in my neighborhood that cuts my grass. Yeah. You know, I mean, obviously we have a nice house and we're in a nice neighborhood, but everybody has these lawn guys that come, and my neighbors ask me when they're like, man, why do you cut your own grass? I was like, you know what? When I was growing up, I didn't have grass to cut. Yeah. I cut my grandparents' grass. This is mine now, and I just enjoy it, you know? And so I think, you know, it's one thing to be really competitive and successful, but I think you got to step back sometimes and really respect and appreciate what you do have.
For sure. Yeah, I remember my dad teaching me how to cut the gut. Are you doing the weed eating too?
I do it all.
You do it all? Okay, yeah. He would never let me do the weed eating. I got to do the grass while he did the weed eating. Yeah. And so we'd do it at the same time every weekend.
I don't let my son do the weed eater.
No, okay, yeah. It's the same deal.
It's the same deal.
Okay, I still to this day.
It wasn't that I don't think he can. He just doesn't do it my way.
That's probably the same thing with my dad.
Yeah.
Being a CPA, my dad has a very specific way in which he wanted to do it. But yeah, I can appreciate that.
That's
so
funny.
You stopped working as an advisor, and then you decided to go into the leadership side of this business, right? So first question I have is, why did you, I mean, obviously you were having an incredibly successful career working with almost 50 NFL athletes and other athletes. Why did you decide to say, hey, you know what? I'm getting out and I'm going to do the leadership side of wealth management? Yeah,
it's a great question. So I became the sales manager of an office, which is like the assistant manager of an office. This is when I was at UBS. And as the sales manager, you're working a lot with the trainees, so you're coaching a lot of the trainees, maybe some of the younger FAs that are just getting started in their career, but then ironically enough, even some of the more successful tenured FAs that might have been having trouble with technology or whatever it is. And in my mind, I just enjoy that coaching aspect and the problem-solving aspect. I mean, if there was an issue, I enjoyed being the go-to guy of the office when they couldn't get to the branch manager. And so that got my toe into leadership. And so I was on the track at UBS to become a complex director. I was going to go through the training program. But my business was also taking off. And that's when my partner Dave and I said, okay, we're just going to focus on this business because this athlete thing was taking a mind of its own. But we also had regular retail clients as well. So it was like a 50-50 deal. So we went to Merrill Lynch because we were really attracted at the time to the Bank of America component of it. You know, we needed that banking component for our athletes. And I thought, man, we've got a great business. I'm just going to focus on business. I was there for about 90 days and I got asked, well, hey, do you want to go through this leadership training program? And it just always seemed to follow me somehow. Maybe it's destiny. I can't explain it, but the leadership thing always followed me. And what happened was I said, yeah, I enjoy this leadership thing. I want to do it. And so I went through the leadership track at Merrill. And they said, I was the sales manager of that office as well in Plano. And they said, Plano and the Galleria here in DFW. And they said, we need you to be the branch manager of the McKinney office. And I said, well, my team that I was working with was in a different city, in Plano, a different suburb. And they said, no, you can go be the officer. I went to be the branch manager of this McKinney, Texas, and I just enjoyed it. So every step along the way, the leadership side seemed to pull at me a little bit more. And I think it's because, I've tried to narrow this down, as a financial advisor, I love working with clients. I really enjoyed that. I loved working with athletes. I loved working with clients. But for me specifically, it was a lot of the same thing every day. We were building a plan. You know, we were investing their money. We were talking to them about their vision, the long term, and it just seemed like it was repetitive. It was on repeat. In leadership, every day's different. You know, every day I've got either a fire to put out, or I'm coaching somebody else, or we're looking for new talent, or I'm hiring someone. I just enjoyed it. I think it fit my brain. It fed my brain of what I needed to do in terms of that leadership component. And like I said, going back to safety patrol or boot camp, leadership just sort of followed me wherever I went, and I enjoyed it. I was comfortable there. And that's why I ultimately, in May of 14, gave up my book to my old partner and went to go manage the New Orleans office for Merrill Lynch.
Okay, so now that begs the question, because before you were working directly with athletes, and now you're coaching and directly working with FAs, who's more difficult, athletes or advisors?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Right? That is really a great question. What I can say is this, is your advisors aren't calling you at 3 a.m. because the ATM card doesn't work, you know? Okay,
that actually makes me think about it. So what is the craziest thing that you had to deal with working with athletes? Because have you seen Ballers?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right. So is that stuff real? I mean, that we see The Rock and him working with all these, professional athletes. Is that real?
I'll tell you, it's 50-50.
Okay.
Some of it is made for TV.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Some of it's made for TV. But the part of that series that made me laugh, and it was early on in the series, he was trying to meet with this linebacker that had worked or it was playing for Dallas on the show. And the mom and the brother were on the field saying, no, you can't meet with him. He's busy. And they said, I'll tell you what, let's have brunch tomorrow. And they're blocking him from talking to the guy. They said, let's have brunch tomorrow. And he said, oh, great, brunch tomorrow. And they set up the time. And he shows up for brunch. And the hostess says, oh, Mr. So-and-so, your party's waiting for you. He goes, my party? So he goes, and all of a sudden he's got a table of 20 people, family and friends. And now there's no way you can talk business. And, you've got all these people there. And then you're stuck picking up the bill.
Right.
That part is real.
Okay, that part is real.
I've experienced that part.
Okay, family of 20 to talk a little business, that's a normal thing.
And no business gets done,
Of course.
But it's, thinking back on it, that is a necessary evil. Kind of like even with, regular retail clients that you work with. I mean, sometimes that's the relationship aspect of the job, and you have to do some of that stuff to build a relationship.
Yeah.
So
you were very strategic and political not to answer the question about whether it was more difficult to work with athletes than advisors. So I'll take that for what I know the answer is during that time, but we won't call you at 3 a.m., but I'm sure there's always a fire that you have to put out.
There's always a fire we have to put out, right?
Do you miss it? Do you miss doing the advisory side? Do you miss working with clients day to day? On a regular basis?
There are some aspects that I do miss. The good news is my former partner is with the company that we're with now.
Yeah.
And I do get to run into a lot of our clients. Some of them are still our really good friends.
That's
One of them went my 50th birthday with me to Pebble Beach. Former athlete client of mine, but still with us. So I do get to see them. I think that feeds the little bit of need I have to want to interact with clients. But I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy being able to see other people be successful or give them my knowledge. I mean, I've been in this business almost 30 years now, and so I've seen a lot personally in my experience, but then also I think part of my job is taking best practitioners and packaging that up, and when you're out meeting with an FA or a team, you can say, you know what, I've seen that before, and here's how this team addressed that. Maybe you should look at X, Y, Z, and you're solving problems that way and helping people, and I enjoy that.
Yeah. I can say from personal experience, you're an excellent manager.
Appreciate that.
I mean, you've the leadership qualities that you instill and that in your entire region. I mean, you're obviously very well respected by everybody here, to the point that you're not just well respected here in DFW. You won an award here recently, right? And if I like to say it's manager of the decade, or some award like that, but you just recently won an award with Raymond James as being the top manager in all of Raymond James all over the United States. So congratulations to that, first of all. But tell me a little bit, I mean, because for you and myself, we're competitive people, right? So when it sounds like, based upon our conversation, anything that you do, you want to be the best at, right? You want to win the top award. So what did it take to win that award? And is that something, when you think about how can I be the best manager, was that the goal, right? Is that ultimately what you wanted to achieve?
That's a tough question. I'll try to figure out how to answer that. I don't do it for the recognition. I didn't do it just to win that. The award is fun, and I enjoy my name in lights. Obviously, we're all competitive in this business, but I can't say that I did it just for that award. That being said, once I knew what the award was, and I knew who had won that award at our home office, they have a plaque that has names of previous winners. And you look at some of those names, you're like, wow, that guy's a legend. He's been great. I mean, he's super respected in our business, and he's been promoted X number of times, and he's running this part of the company or whatever it is. That stuff drives you. You're like, I want to be on the plaque. I want to be on the plaque. Now, that being said, the rest of it just falls into place because I was already doing all that stuff anyway. I just had to say, well, if I really want to be on the plaque, maybe I just need to kick it into overdrive a little bit. Maybe I need to wake up a little bit earlier or work a little bit harder. And so what that award takes is, it takes obviously a lot of the metrics, revenue growth, growing the profit margins, managing your expenses, bringing in new talent is a big part of it. And I'm a little like you. You give me a carrot and you tell me what it is to take to go and get it, I'll go get it. So that was fun.
When you think about, because something that permeates all of these different phases of your life, it seems like excellence, and it's something we talk about too all the time, is obviously a theme, right? And so I'm always fascinated to find out how do you view excellence? In your mind, what is excellence, and how do you position yourself because I know this about you. You obviously are always striving to be better than you were the day before, right? There's something called the Kaizen method. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but it was like every single day you take a very small step to get better, right? And this idea of if you do that compounded over time, you'll see huge results on just very small incremental change every single day. And so for you, what is excellence, right? And why is it that this pursuit of excellence drives you?
Yeah, that's a great question too. First of all, going back to that Kaizen method, that's hard for me because I don't. My personality is such as that I don't do anything in just small increments. I'm full steam ahead, and so that takes a lot of discipline from me to say, let's work on small things little by little. So that's part one. But excellence to me, and I think this is different for everybody. But excellence to me is exactly what you just said. It's just getting better every day. Just trying to learn. I still read a lot. I don't read a lot of books, but I read a lot of stuff online. I read a lot of articles that I can find. I'm always trying to learn, and I'm always trying to. I've always been a person that I think I study people. When I've seen other leaders, if I've been at a conference, I study the way somebody speaks on stage. When I've looked at you before, I'm like, man, he's really good, but why is he so good? Or when I went through a lot of the leadership training at Merrill, learning how to speak on stage. So I think you're always learning, you're always curious, you're always trying to figure out what's the edge because financial advisors, leadership, even athletes, we all do the same thing in our respective roles. What's the edge to be just a little bit better than the other guy? There's a lot of really good leaders here at Raymond James, and I'm trying to figure out, I learn from a lot of them. I have a network across the country of people I talk to, and I want to know what are they doing? What are they doing in Chicago? What are they doing in Miami? What are they doing in these different places? And how can I take that and make our place better?
So I'm curious because you coach a lot of teams too. Is there any specific trait, and you saw it in obviously athletes that were at the best of the best, right? They were at top of their game. And you're working with the top teams, too, who are at the top of their game, just in a different, industry. Is there a common thread that you see with the highest performers? Is it a mindset? Is it a personality trait? Is there anything that you notice that says, oh, that's something that I see across the board, regardless of whether it's athletes or financial professionals?
Yes, there is. There's an X factor.
Okay.
I read this article recently. It was written by a former manager at our previous firm. And he was talking about his 25 years of experience in interviewing people for the financial advisor role.
Okay.
And in our industry, it's well known, it's well documented. 30% are successful when you start out as a trainee. The other 70% just fizzle out. And he tried to figure out over 25 years what made the difference. What made this guy be the one, or this guy or girl be the one of that 30% that actually was successful? And they tried to figure out, was it mentorship? Was it different training? Was it, what were they doing? And it was grit. it's the people that persevere through everything. And I think it's no different from what you were just asking me right now. It's you have to have a little bit of grit. If you're a financial advisor, this job can get tough when you're trying to build a business. If you're in leadership, this job can be tough and it can be lonely sometimes. You can have a bad day, but can you pick yourself up off the floor, show up to work the next day with a happy face and say, okay, I'm gonna attack the day and make it happen. It's grit.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is that also what keeps you a loyal Dallas Cowboys fan? Is grit? Is grit? Because you need a little bit of that these days to be a Cowboys fan, and you continue to be a loyal fan. We have had this conversation about this. So, is that what you have? You clearly have grit, right?
I have grit and I have memories. I'm still clinging to the memories. I just, my kids have never seen them win, a championship, but I still have those memories. So I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I'm a sucker.
You're a loyal guy. I will say that you're a very loyal guy, which is
Yeah.
actually a great quality in leadership. I really do believe that, but. Sometimes to a fault when it comes to a team like the Cowboys. Okay, completely switching gears because we've talked this before. There is a vision that you have one day of maybe having your own podcast, right?
Yes, this is fun.
Tell me about this vision that we've talked about in your podcast.
As long as your viewers don't take my idea from me,
exactly.
I might need to trademark this. But this actually started with a buddy of mine, a guy that I coached baseball with. Okay, so when my son was playing baseball, we coached the teams together, and after the games, we'd go to a restaurant with the team, and the boys are doing boy things, whatever they do at 10 or 11 years old, and the parents are on one end of the table, and we're drinking a few beers and having good conversation. And then sometimes that conversation would go on later in the night, whether you're texting back and forth, and it's just stuff that guys think about, and it could be easy stuff, like just talking about different things that people wear, different appearance, or and it just becomes guy talk back and forth, but in a fun way.
Yes.
And I thought, we need a podcast on this. This is good. This is good debate, and sometimes it gets into debate, friendly debate.
Right.
It's not anything that's belligerent, but you get into a debate like, no, man, I see it this way. No, I see it this way. And it could be anything from coaching to what people look like, or what people are wearing, or bad drivers. It could be anything. But our view was Dad Bod Radio.
I love it.
Dad Bod Radio, and that's coming one day. Yeah,
that is
I got to get it approved at Raymond James.
Will you invite me to Dad Bod Radio?
I will definitely invite you.
I want to be a part of this.
I got to pick the topic for sure.
Pick the topic, and then I'm there for sure.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. Okay, I want to finish on this, and I want to finish kind of on our excellence talk, right? Mm-hmm. And so thinking about your journey, right? Starting off in Corpus Christi, deciding to go off into the Navy, then really switching gears and ultimately having a successful career in managing over 50, NFL clients and then going into a leadership role. Would you have changed anything along the way, or would you have told your younger self anything differently along this that you've learned that would have altered your path, or would you have kept it exactly the way that it has been up to this point?
I've never been asked that question, and you didn't pre-question me on these, so this is catching me off guard. But you know what? I am a guy that lives life to the fullest, and I have no regrets. I don't really like to look backwards and think, well, what if this or what if that? So I'm really content. I'm happy with the way it worked out. I try to instill in my kids, nowadays, I was telling this story the other day. When my son was in high school, they all want to go to college and come out making $1 million a year because that's what they read on social media. And they forget that, I started my career making $23,000 a year. That was my salary, and it just takes hard work. Yeah. And we can't lose sight of that piece of it. And so everything that I did along the way was a building block to that next level. And so I don't regret it at all. I wouldn't change a thing, I don't think.
I love it.
Yeah.
The thing I take away from this is that the personality trait that has made obviously a big part of your success is that grit, right? And I see that in you, and I completely agree with that aspect of that's really what drives excellence is if you've got that grit and you put yourself out there. You got to write letters to prisons or whatever it is that you have to do, but it's truly thinking outside the box. And I think you kind of think that nothing is impossible. right? I mean, is that true?
I would agree with that. Yes.
And so, with that in mind, are the Cowboys going to the Super Bowl this year?
This is the year. This is the year. We're 2-2-1. We're right back in the thick of it.
Okay.
CD catches one of those balls. We got 3 wins already.
Oh, so grit and hopelessness. I guess those two things.
One and the same. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Jeremy, this was a blast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so
fun.
much. I really enjoyed it, and go Cowboys.
Awesome. Go Cowboys. Thank you.
Thanks.